Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the College of Continuing and Professional Studies webinar, Maximize Your Strengths and Boost Resilience. Thank you so much for joining us today on YouTube and then a few of us on Zoom. Next slide, please. My name is Lisa Beckham, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. If you have questions about this webinar or other programs that we offer, our contact information will be on the last slide of this presentation. Next slide. There are some logistical items I'd like to address before we begin. I ask that you please submit your questions throughout the webinar so we can address them during the Q&A portion in the last 5 minutes of this presentation. To submit your questions during the webinar, go to the description on the bottom of the YouTube video and click on the link to the question form. There's also live captioning available for viewing if you click on the CC button towards the bottom right side of your screen. Next slide, please. We will send an email within a week with a link to the recording of this webinar. The link will be sent to the email address you submitted during registration. Next slide. I'd like to introduce the topic for today's webinar, Maximize Your Strengths and Boost Resilience. The uncertainty of sudden major crises, as well as smaller everyday setbacks, can test our resilience. Our transforming workplace will require us to pay more attention to our overall wellness and balance and that of our teams. In addition to prioritizing self-care, you can draw on a set of best inner qualities as positive drivers to help guide you in challenging situations and create a more fulfilling work experience. It is an honor to introduce today's webinar presenter, Karen Gotch. Karen is a global talent and communication consultant who designs strategic talent and organizational development solutions, drawing on more than 20 years of HR, business, and higher education experience. She coaches her clients on navigating the complexities of collaboration across boundaries with expertise in leadership development, global virtual teams, impactful communication, and cultural and emotional intelligence. Thank you so much for being with us today, Karen, and welcome.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm very happy to be here today to talk about this very timely topic of strategies we can use to boost our resilience, in particular by knowing and maximizing our strengths to help us out. In our short hour today together, we will be scratching the surface of this topic. And while we aren't able to connect individually on what brought us here today, it's important to acknowledge that we are in a time where it's safe to say that nearly all of us are being challenged from many directions, globally, nationally, locally, and at home. We can all probably point to one or more areas of our professional and or personal lives that are significantly impacted by current events, as well as any previous challenges that continue for us, which we don't want to overlook with the current distractions and concerns. As we move forward with some trepidation, but hopefully increasing optimism, it's important to take a time out and think about what is out of our control and what's in our control and the influence that we have. That is the essence of today's topic. In the professional development programs of this college, we emphasize workplace applications. However, there's never been a time where the line between home and work, at least the population that's working remotely, has been more blurred. If you joined us in April for the webinar on remote work, you understand even more why it's important to pay more holistic attention to ourselves and our team beyond just getting the work done. And if you're interested, you can find that remote work recording at the bottom of the same registration page for this webinar. To start today, we will look at how we frame resilience and consider some questions which will help you self-evaluate your resilience capability, and also remind ourselves of the wide range of ideas available to help us bounce back from tough times. Second, I'll introduce you to a brief character strengths survey that you can complete on your own time in order to rank 24 researched character strengths. Third, I'll highlight a few of the strengths which have been linked to resilience so that you can call on them as your superpowers to help you manage your reactions to difficult circumstances. Finally, you'll get an idea of how to apply your strengths in ways that will support your authenticity and confidence, both at work and at home. I mentioned optimism, and that is the tone that I hope guides our exploration of this topic today. So let's get started. I'm going to flip the title and start with the foundation of what resilience is before we talk about boosting it. So it goes without saying that we're in a period of sudden, relentless, and yes, unprecedented change. We've talked about managing change over many decades with many different models, and even coined a phrase, living in a VUCA world, an acronym which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Many of us might agree that our more traditional concept of change with its predictability is looking pretty good right about now. But today's reconfigured, fast-changing environment seems very relevant, as shown in this somewhat disconcerting graphic. But rather than increase your anxiety, hopefully this validates what you and others around you might be feeling and thinking. And again, to think this goes far beyond our work environment. But for today's focus, it serves its purpose to remind us of where we're at. We're not imagining it. We just want to know how to manage it. And that isn't the same for each of us. So what is resilience? We hear it a lot and perhaps don't stop to apply it in a personal way or in our vastly different experiences. I'll start with a definition from the American Psychological Association, but we'll ask you to think about how resilience really feels to you, or how lack of resilience feels for you, physically, mentally, and emotionally, because that's the definition and the outcome that ultimately matters. So resilience is adapting well in the face of adversity or significant sources of stress. This can be a single event or spread out over a longer period of time. Achieving resilience is not a one and done, but gaining the awareness and mitigating strategies to cope can diminish the impact. Resilience is managing difficult circumstances that can also empower personal growth. The best change, negative or positive, is when we can reflect on the lessons learned and realize that we are stronger and more adaptable in anticipation of the next time. And yes, there will be a next time. But this glimmer of personal growth is not a bad consolation prize. Resilience is an opportunity to cultivate gratitude and other positive emotions. Building on the personal growth potential, sometimes it takes a time of loss or grief or major disappointment to realize what we take for granted and to be more conscious of it. Maybe we start noticing and appreciating silver linings. Resilience includes behaviors, thoughts, and actions that anyone can learn and develop. So can resilience and the resulting well-being and happiness be learned? Positive psychologists say yes. As decades of research and hundreds of studies have now shown, people who express their strengths tend to be more resilient, empowered, energized, and engaged. Resilience is something that takes time and intentionality to build. Here's the caveat: nothing worthwhile is easy, as they say. So leaving today with some awareness of the type of resilience you need and some steps to incorporate into your mindset and routine already put you on the path to gain momentum, just like any other goal that you deem worthy. To summarize, it sounds like hard work, but in fact, resilience is ordinary, not extraordinary. You don't have to have a newsworthy or an Olympic-sized comeback story. Whatever resilience means for you, you have it in you. This quote seems to reflect the human need for two-way connection and compassion that is showing up more than ever. The past few months during the pandemic and protests in particular, many people have focused on others and their needs. We see this in neighbors doing errands, donating household supplies, checking in on vulnerable people, sewing masks, forming neighborhood watches, cleaning up communities, and so much more. Don't forget the often overlooked self-compassion. How do you remember to be kind to yourself and not judge yourself? Mindfulness is important. Try to just be in the moment and feel what you are feeling, knowing that we will all react differently, move forward differently, and need different things. In other words, don't hesitate to ask for help while you're offering help to others. One way we can gain some self-awareness is to answer a few questions about where we might be sitting on the resilience spectrum at any given time. So you can do this exercise along with me in your head, or you can grab a pen and piece of paper if you have one handy. Also, a reminder that this webinar will be recorded, so you'll have access to these slides to review them later. The directions for this personal resilience inventory are pretty simple. Answer the 8 questions with your self-rating of yes, no, or to some extent, which is also it depends. Then also think about some personal examples and coping strategies that influenced your responses. What have you tried in the past? There's no right or wrong answer or even a score. It's just an opportunity to get some clarity on where you might be at. So number 1, I understand and manage my emotions and feelings. This is emotional intelligence at its core, something which is getting a lot of attention in classrooms and the boardrooms again. Number 2, I have a clear understanding of my own capabilities, my strengths and accomplishments. Well, this is the right place for that. It's right on target for our next discussion. Number 3, I have clear goals and meaning in my life. Chances are you have clear goals at work, even smart ones, as we say, but your bigger life meaning may not be so clear. This is finding your purpose, what gets you up in the morning and keeps you moving ahead. Number 4, I deal well with stress and pressure. How you react and regulate how you tolerate stress and discomfort can be very important. Sometimes our coping mechanisms are hardest to implement when we're feeling this way. Number 5, I like to focus on solutions, not problems. Being solution focused can be thought of as an emphasis on optimism, perhaps seeing your glass as half full. Number 6, I have a good work-life balance. Work-life balance is the pot of gold that we're all seeking. I've got another exercise shortly related to this. Number 7, I have a good personal support network in place. Who's got your back? Write down the names of your key connections in your personal and professional networks. Nurture them and think depth as well as breadth. Number 8, I take time to reflect and put things in perspective. We'll do a lot of reflecting today, starting with this personal inventory. Finally, you might want to check your responses with a trusted person in your life. Self-assessments are a great starting point, but sometimes honest feedback can uncover our blind spots and give us some valuable aha moments. The first question in the personal resilience inventory is related to emotional intelligence. That is, understanding and managing emotions and feelings. The brain plays a big role in this, with the amygdala as the emotional center. Information comes in through our senses and is processed through our amygdala. If there's a situation that triggers us, our amygdala can hijack us with a cascade of stress hormones and prevent us from accessing the higher executive function regions of our brain. Think of this as the fight or flight response to the saber-toothed tiger. When this happens, we are robbed of our ability to think clearly, use decision-making well, problem solve, plan, and exercise good time management. Moreover, our own hijacks can also trigger a similar response in others, causing a ripple effect in our relationships. There's a cost to it, and often a health and well-being impact over time, which can wear down our resilience instead of boosting it. In order to tame that tiger, you have been calling on parts of your core identity with certain degrees of success, perhaps without being fully aware of it. It may seem like a luxury to step back and reflect on past experiences, but even 5 minutes can provide some insight into how we react and perhaps get ahead of it next time. I happen to think reflection and deep thinking are vastly underrated skills and values in our workplaces. First, describe when you were successful in overcoming a major challenge. Try to go beyond generalities and articulate specific words to describe the situation. Second, what did you learn about yourself and your capabilities? There's a reason this particular experience has stuck with you and popped into your head right away. It only makes sense to learn a good and hopefully positive lesson from it, regardless of the nature of the event. Next, identify 1 to 2 personal strengths that you were able to draw upon, or maybe that you wish you had drawn on. And finally, if these strengths worked before, how can you leverage them again the next time you need them? It's a simple but useful exercise that can become a habit. And if you're not sure of your strengths, you don't need a formal assessment, but there are some tools available, and we'll dive deeper into that in the next section. But first, think about why that particular experience jumped into your mind as memorable. Do many of your challenging moments tend to fall in one or more areas of your life? And what might that signal about the amount of tension that you need to direct to it? Question 6 on your personal resilience inventory asked if you have a good work-life balance. But we use this expression so frequently that it seems watered down, and we may not think about what it really means for us to have balance. Here's one way to keep a finger on the pulse of the various dimensions of a balanced life. Balance is personal and unique to each person. What may represent balance for some may be stressful or boring for others. So for this exercise, consider these 10 key pillars and rate how fulfilled you are with each of them on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 meaning you are completely unfulfilled, and 10 meaning you are extremely fulfilled with this part of your life. As you see, the 10 pillars are professional, financial, physical, spiritual, social support, intimacy, family, learning and growth, home and office environment, and play and fun. For each of those last 3, you may decide to give 2 ratings if they're different. So after all 10 pillars have been rated, determine an overall life satisfaction rating. Now, there may be reasons why one area is now showing up as particularly important to you in a given time or phase in your life. For example, during the pandemic, maybe you're focusing much more on your physical health over play and fun. But scanning your overall results may highlight some surprising gaps where you've sacrificed one area over another, and you can step back to think about whether some conscious rebalancing might be appealing. The goal is not to have a perfect 10 in each pillar. Rather, the goal is to use subjective ratings to lead to some action, which will improve or sustain satisfaction in each life area. This balance can and should be assessed over time. A regular check on how balanced you are can highlight useful patterns and help you learn and deepen self-awareness about where you can apply your strengths to your resilience. Next, we'll move into some specific discussion about identifying and maximizing your individual strengths. I like this quote from Brené Brown. In this quote, I particularly like the image of joy and resilience as a reservoir that can be replenished and fuel us. It speaks to the importance of recognizing small lessons learned and small wins that accumulate over time to create a safety net for us. So think about what brings you joy and how you can replicate those moments and savor them. What does your tank look like today? Do you feel like you're almost out of gas, even though you've got a quarter tank? Or is that plenty to get you going to where you need to be? The next part of our discussion will be around identifying your character strengths, which you can also think of as added fuel in your tank. Our character strengths reflect our core values and the unique array of capabilities that we each possess. Knowing them can help you improve your relationships, enhance your health and overall well-being, navigate and overcome problems, find satisfying and meaningful work, and mindfully show up as your better self. We can choose to bring the best of ourselves to any situation at hand, Maybe not all day, maybe not in every moment, but it is within our ability to maximize how we show up. Our strengths are a constant within us, and although they may appear in different ways and times according to our need, we have the option to lead from those strengths. This is how we make sense of our inner and outer world experiences and how we navigate change and cultivate resilience. Some of you may have already taken a strengths assessment. There are several available. Clifton Strengths Finder is a well-known one. One I recommend is grounded in positive psychology and the science of analyzing strengths. It's called the VIA Character Strengths Survey. And it's been completed by over 11 million people worldwide to date. You'll get a clearer visual of this on the next two slides. Positive psychologists and researchers have identified 24 strengths, the basic building blocks that represent our individuality, psychologically speaking. We each possess all 24 strengths in varying degrees and combinations. These strengths are universally valued around the world to different degrees and are defined as positive traits that are beneficial to self and others. They lead us to positive emotions, relationships, and into engaging and meaningful life activities where we flourish. You can take this survey for free at viacharacter.org. After setting up an account, and you'll receive a ranked profile of your 24 strengths. You can receive a more in-depth report with a fee. The next two slides illustrate the VIA Character Strengths model. And from the VIA Institute, they like to identify this as a distinct constellation of strengths that we all have by combining these 6 categories, virtue categories, and 24 strengths. So character strengths are different than your other personal strengths, such as your unique skills, talents, interests, and resources, because they reflect the real you, who you are at your core. So every individual possesses all 24 character strengths in differing degrees, giving each person a unique character strengths profile. Down the left-hand side in dark blue, you'll see 3 of the 6 virtue categories on this slide, which encompass part of the 24 strengths. And the 24 strengths are in dark blue, going horizontal. So in the interest of time, we'll just cover this high-level look at the different categories and descriptions. The first virtue category is wisdom. And this encompasses cognitive strengths that entail the acquisition and use of knowledge. The 5 strengths in this category are creativity, curiosity, judgment, love of learning, and perspective. And while we're reviewing the model, I would encourage you again to make note of any particular strengths going horizontal that stand out to you. Feel free to jot those down as well. The second virtue category is courage. That includes emotional strengths that involve the exercise of will to accomplish goals in the face of both internal and external opposition. So this includes the strengths of bravery, perseverance, honesty, and zest. Finally, the third category on this page is humanity. This includes interpersonal strengths that involve tending to and befriending others. And those strengths include love, kindness, and social intelligence. Here are the remaining 3 virtue categories and their associated character strengths. Justice includes civic strengths that underlie a healthy community life. The strengths in this category include teamwork, fairness, and leadership. For the category of temperance, that includes strengths that protect against excess. There are 4 strengths in this category: forgiveness, humility, prudence, self-regulation. And finally, transcendence, the last virtue category, strengths that forge connections to the larger universe and provide meaning. The strengths here, 5 of them, include appreciation of beauty and excellence, gratitude, hope, humor, and spirituality. So that is the high-level summary of the strengths. There is much more background, theory, and application behind it for those who are interested. Should you choose to complete the VIA Character Strengths Survey, take a look at your ranked profile and think about the following. At first glance, how does your character strengths profile fit you? An assessment is just that. It's a snapshot in time. You will have an initial reaction to it and should make a note of it. What surprises you most about the results? There may be some surprises. Call out what those are and where they might be coming from. Do the top 5 strengths resonate with you as signature strengths? That is what they are called in this particular model. Are they at the core of who you are, and do they energize you when you practice them? The top 5 strengths are the ones that rise to the top for you in many situations. It's likely there will be fewer surprises there when you take some time to reflect on them. Think about a time when you were functioning at your best and also a time when you were not functioning at your best. So which strengths helped you move forward, either in a positive sense or coming from a negative experience, again, moving forward positively? This is when your profile can give you some clues as to where some of your strengths may show up more often than others. And finally, what strengths do your mentors or role models embody, and how do they express them? We can all picture someone in our lives who embodies strengths that we admire. Use this new knowledge to pay more attention to people around you. Reflecting on your top strengths, especially in the workplace, ask yourself, how many of these strengths am I regularly using during my workday? If you're using 4 or more strengths, then commend yourself. Here's the return on investment. People who use 4 or more of their signature strengths at work have more positive work experiences and report that their work is a calling in their life. You might consider how you can keep a daily awareness of how you're using these strengths. If you are using 0 to 3 of your top strengths, start by adding in 1 more strength and focusing on it. Find a way to use one of your top strengths in a new way. Brainstorm with your manager or a trusted advisor. Journal about ways you've used your strengths at work in the past, if that appeals to you. And consider asking others to give you examples of when they've seen you express each of your top strengths. Your workplace has a vested interest in encouraging you to use all of your strengths in the right role and in the right work environment. It results in better engagement and teamwork and better business results. It also lowers expensive employee turnover, morale, and productivity costs. Employees like to do what they're good at, so understanding strengths and bringing them into career development and performance discussions can be a win-win for both sides. As noted before, you can develop your strengths with time and intention, and repetition and practice are 2 sound ways of making progress. So let's see what that might look like at work. A key to seeing strength-based improvements, or really any type of self-improvement, is moving from self-awareness to action. How you apply what you are learning and paying attention, and what you are paying attention to will make the difference. This author's examples aren't specific to resilience, but they certainly could be. You'll see the connection, and they can show you a simple way to make them more top of mind for you, especially at work, 1 step at a time. Think of this simple formula to intentionally flex your strengths muscles in a less emotional situation. Let's call these cues, routines, and rewards. Your cue is an action or something that triggers you to pay attention and to get ready for an action. A routine is something you get used to doing related to that cue and spend, say, 10 minutes on it on a regular basis so that it becomes a habit. And no habit is complete without a reward of some sort to reinforce the process. So for example, at the beginning of your workday, although these examples can be flexed at any time, when you turn on your computer, that's your cue, use your strength of curiosity to spend 10 minutes reading and learning something new. That's your routine. And then share this idea with a valued colleague who appreciates you. That's your reward. When you arrive at work for creativity, that's your cue, spend 10 minutes using your strength of creativity to mind map new ways, to think about new ways you can serve your clients. That'll be your routine. And then you get your morning coffee as a reward. For love, when you open your laptop, that's your cue. Use your strength of love to spend 10 minutes thinking about how your work today can help somebody else. That's your routine. And then read a thank you note from one of your clients as a reward. When you travel into work, that's your cue. Use your strength of leadership to spend 10 minutes thinking about a leader you've admired as your routine. For your reward, plan ways to channel their approach in your work for similar results. Now let's think about during breaks. So when you go to get your lunch, that's your cue. Spend 10 minutes using your strength of kindness to check in with a colleague on what's working well for them. That's a routine. And then you get something good to eat as your reward. And remember, you can adapt all of these depending on whether you're actually in an office right now or working remotely, of course. For bravery, when it's time for your morning break, and that's your cue, use your bravery strength to spend 10 minutes speaking with a colleague about a potentially sensitive issue or an idea that's very important to you. Make that your routine. And then head for a quick walk to stretch and clear your head after what might be a tough conversation. That's your reward. For appreciation of beauty and excellence, when you get ready to have lunch and you have that cue, use your appreciation of beauty and excellence to spend 10 minutes sitting on a bench outside and posting a picture of something that inspires you. That's your routine. And then again, find a reward for yourself, whether it's a good lunch or a cup of coffee, whatever is meaningful to you. Then at the end of your workday, let's assume that you're on your way home from work, whether that's a commute or whether that's going from your home office to the living room. Spend 10 minutes using your strength of gratitude to find one way you had a positive impact on somebody that day. That's your routine. And then head in your front door. That's a reward. Or in this case, if you're working at home, you want to head out your front door. That's equally valid. For honesty, when you pack up your work, either to go home or put it away for another day, that's your cue, to use your strength of honesty to spend 10 minutes acknowledging failures, fair criticisms, and areas for ongoing learning and improvement. And make a note of these for tomorrow. So that can be your daily routine. And then feel free to either return home or to enjoy the evening, whatever that happens to look like as your reward. Finally, perspective. When you get ready to finish working as your cue, spend 10 minutes looking for a quote on perspective that inspires you. Somebody from outside your regular circle. And then spend 30 seconds meditating on that as your reward and enjoy your clear-headedness. The idea here is that your strengths stay with you wherever you may be, and it only takes small efforts to make a difference over time in order to help you maximize them. More directly related to resilience, research is showing that resilience and post-traumatic growth correspond with the following strengths. The first is improved relationships, including the strengths of kindness and love. These are both from the humanity virtue category. The second is being open to new possibilities. The strengths here are creativity, curiosity, and love of learning. All three of these are from the wisdom virtue category. Next, appreciation of life. And these strengths include appreciation of beauty and excellence, gratitude, and zest. Two of these are from the transcendence virtue category, and then zest is from courage, not surprisingly. Next up is personal strength, and this includes the strengths of bravery, perseverance, and honesty. All three of those from the courage virtue category. You'll notice the theme of courage coming up here and relationships. Finally, spiritual development. Spirituality is the strength that is focused on here, and this is also from the transcendence virtue category. So I mentioned before that the strengths recipe, as I call it, works at a given time or for a given situation, but it will look different for each of us. It'll take some time and error and may transform the next time you encounter a need for resilience. So what worked before won't necessarily work again the same way. So consider this collection of strengths, your resilience cookbook, as a helpful reference to use as a refresher when you need it. Notice where these strengths show up in you and how you might be leveraging them more in particular during challenging times. Even if one or more of these don't show up as your top 5 signature strengths, don't be surprised that you're calling on them anyway, and or be much more conscious of them when you need them. Again, remember, we use all of the 24 strengths, but in different ways, different degrees and at different times. So while there is research around specific strengths you might call upon in challenging situations, it's important to remember, as noted before, that we all use our strengths at different times, as I said. And especially during unprecedented times, it may make sense that you are using certain strengths more than others. To take this line of thought a bit further, here's one key VIA strengths researchers' specific example around what might serve us during the pandemic. And remember that resilience can relate to a specific event or a longer period of change. So it's not surprising that different strengths might rise up for us during a pandemic that's evolving over months and may continue to do so over a much longer time. Judgment and critical thinking. When confronted with complex issues, using this strength can help you sort out the facts from the opinions, from the many different sides and voices that you're hearing. It can help serve as a filter, help you sort through all of this information. A strength in perspective is helpful because naturally this information gathering will lead you to see a wider view of what's most relevant. So it really fits nicely with judgment. After you're gathering all of this data, how do we sort through it? How do we step back and put it in relation to what's helpful for us, our close connections, and our broader community? Prudence. Safety and caution have become more important for us in this pandemic and in all situations of great uncertainty. So in this particular case, we've talked about engaging in activities in public, being around large groups of people. How do we present ourselves, take necessary precautions, and prioritize health and safety? One critical part of strengths that we haven't touched on is that it is entirely possible to have too much or too little of a good thing. So think about the results of your personal resilience inventory and your pillars of a balanced life exercises, and consider whether and when you might have a tendency to overuse or underuse a strength, which may show up at a particularly emotional time or situation. So here is one example of overuse during this pandemic time: love of learning. Ask yourself, if this is a strength of yours, how many hours are you watching or reading the headlines? Do you have information overload? If you find yourself feeling agitated or disturbed, consider a news fast or only take in some of the summaries. What about underuse? Think about creativity. Maybe you haven't had a chance to always stretch your creativity strength. Maybe your work location or your travel or your family situation has prevented that. We've read about many people who have taken advantage of stay-at-home periods to explore brand new interests, or maybe just get back to something that was once meaningful to them. And some people are using this time to not only take on new hobbies, but maintain relationships and reach out to get to know their neighbors. So as we bounce back to resilience, we can look beyond the workplace and the headlines to common sense strategies that we can use in all parts of our lives. Look at these through the strengths of, through the lens of your strengths. Where do your strengths show up? So the first three strategies for bouncing back relate to keeping focus on your sense of purpose and meaning and drawing on optimism. It's a glass half full mindset. Draw on your strengths like hope, gratitude, zest, and spirituality. The next two involve forward movement in solving problems and taking action. Here you can draw on strengths such as creativity, judgment, and bravery to guide you to make the next best decision, even if it's not easy for you. The next two strategies relate to flexibility and positive growth and encompass such strengths as love of learning and curiosity. And the final three involve stress tolerance and self-care. Back to our point on compassion for self and others. Here you can think about using strengths of love, kindness, and humility. Getting a little more tactical, here are 6 specific activities that you can try to focus with your strengths. Some are variations on a theme related to positivity, reflection, and intention. So storytelling, this is changing your perspective and the message that you send yourself. Instead of focusing on a negative outcome, rewrite the story so that it ends positively. For gratitude, if you're a writer, a journal may appeal to you for this, but a Post-it note or a back of a napkin is fine as well. Just focus on doing it regularly and take the follow-up step of sharing with others. You might be surprised at what you end up putting on your list that you might otherwise forget. Next is 3 good things. This is similar to gratitude. It's a focus on positivity. And when you capture 3 positive things that happened in your day, I think it will surprise you at how positive your day was. Silver linings. Whether it's the news cycle or your inner critic talking to you, your mind can get wrapped up in the negative loop. So try to double the positives to counteract that. To double the positives, reflect on at least 2 positive things for every frustration that you're feeling in a given situation. And yes, make a list if you'd like. Flow. Have you ever gotten so involved in something that you lost track of time? This can be something physical or mental. but can help you to focus. And finally, mindfulness. There are so many online resources now. If you can't get to a yoga studio or wish to try a new form of mindfulness to stay in the moment, there are many options available. Try one of these exercises and see if it sticks, or seek out something new that might be better suited to you. I'll leave you with one last reflection exercise here. Remember that you have great flexibility in your mind, including through which lens you wish to view the world around you. So use your strength of perspective or one of the others to motivate yourself to see things in a different light. Consider other possibilities, or even put yourself in someone's shoes. So if we look at these questions, you can consider one or two or all of them. Can there be a different way of looking at this matter? Can we stop ourselves and reframe? Is there a lesson that I learned from this experience? We've talked quite a bit today about the value of taking that moment to pause and look back and learn. It may be a painful experience, but if you can change your mindset to see the good that comes out of that reflection, you'll form that habit and come back to that frequently. Could there be any other way of reacting to this situation? I think we all know the answer is probably yes. We may not react that way. Our amygdala may have encouraged us to react in a certain way at the moment, but honestly, there will be different ways of reacting. And this is where having some discussions with trusted peers can come in very handy, asking for their perspective on how they would have handled the situation. Which leads into the next question. If this happens again, will I react in the same way? So one of the benefits of focusing on your resilience, your emotional intelligence, your stress management, is you may be able to perceive when those stressful feelings are rising to the top. You may be able to get ahead of them and avoid some uncomfortable situations. This is a question that can help you do that, help you plan and prepare for uncomfortable situations. And then last, how would I have felt if I was in that person's position? So if your challenging situation is coming out of a conversation with somebody, it is important to put yourself in their shoes. It's important, it's not easy, but again, as all of these points indicate, with a little bit of practice, you can certainly gain some momentum here. So as we figure out ways of thinking, doing, and being in our new environments, use your strengths to influence what that might look like for you. So to conclude, learning agility is a necessity moving forward in these VUCA times. Remember that VUCA is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Learning to build your strengths and boost your resilience is definitely a journey, and it's not one to be feared, as noted in this quote. I encourage you to use your strengths of love of learning, curiosity, and hope to see a way forward in meeting the challenges that you encounter. And keep learning how your signature strengths can embolden you and provide the confidence that you need to bounce back. More than ever, forward-thinking organizations should rely on creating a strength-based coaching mindset in their leaders. This way, they will provide their opportunities, provide their employees with support and motivation to promote success. And as a result, they'll be creating more opportunities, hopefully together. So to keep the learning going, I invite you to join me for one of these other 6-hour CAPS short courses that I'll be facilitating this fall. They are Emotional Intelligence on October 16th, Communicating Across Cultures on November 6th, Strategic Talent Management on November 11th, and Strategies for Working Remotely, and that date is still to be determined. But it would be great to have you join us. And in just a moment, Lisa will be able to provide you with the link for registration for these and for all of the wonderful CCAPS courses that are available to you. Also, if you're interested in learning more about your strengths and debriefing your survey profile, please reach out to me. You see my email address on the screen, lastname.firstname@gmail.com. Otherwise, I am in the University of Minnesota email list as well, and you can search for me on LinkedIn. It would be great to talk to you. So final takeaways, if I had to boil it down to 3, find your support system, remember to use your strengths regularly, and check in on what's working. And number 3, recognize your progress and celebrate successes, no matter how small they are. So thank you very much for your attention today. Lisa, I'm going to turn it back to you if we have time for a couple of questions.
We certainly do. Thank you so much, Karen, for your words of wisdom on this topic and for your really encouraging message. I know it definitely, I guess I would say, hit the spot for me, especially during this time. So we'll now move on to the question and answer portion of the webinar. So our first question deals with sort of stressful situations overall. So will your strengths results be impacted by stressful situations? So for example, during this time of COVID-19, would that have an impact on our overall strengths?
So fantastic question, because your first answer might be yes, because it's going to be top of mind. It's all that I'm thinking about. The interesting thing, and the reason that we always look for highly researched, very reliable, very valid scientific assessment instruments to use, is that they've taken this into account. And while it's possible that you might have some shift in the ranking of your 24 characteristics, it's highly unlikely that they would pop up, especially to the top, your 5 core signature strengths. So you can see some movement from time to time. What also might be interesting, if we look at this from an optimist perspective, coming out of this situation being the pandemics, the protests, whatever else you have going on in your life that you're struggling with, you're learning coping mechanisms that maybe we weren't expecting to. So it'll be interesting to see if you would take it again in 6 months or in a year, what you might find. But they are intended to be quite stable. There will be movement in them, but you would want to do a bit more work to uncover that. So that's a little bit of a caveat too with assessments. Isolated assessments, they can be helpful to a certain extent, but sometimes, especially if you have some more complex questions, you'd want to seek out some coaching assistance with that to dig a little bit deeper and to find out how to really leverage those strengths. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Our next question is more about the bravery strength. So the viewer was wondering about bravery and speaking up for what's right. So they're asking questions. So what about when you've been beaten down for doing this or practicing bravery, or when you've been penalized for practicing bravery and doing the right thing? How should you respond?
What a wonderful question, a complex question. I didn't hear you allude to a particular personal situation or a workplace situation. I'm going to take the opportunity to address it from a workplace situation. And the reason for that is these are very human emotions, very human strengths that we're talking about. One of the most wonderful things about this is that it does apply to both your personal life and your professional life. We have had some challenges in our workplaces, though, looking beyond the numbers, looking beyond the goals, the outcomes that we need, what we're rated for on our performance reviews. Sometimes we forget that it should not be only what we are supposed to accomplish, that is what we get done, but how we get it done. And the most progressive organizations are willing to look at that and maybe even draw a line in the sand and say, We should be evaluating, supporting, promoting our employees based on a 50-50 division. Your outcomes, your goals, your numbers are 50% of your rating. The other 50% is how you show up, how emotionally intelligent you are, how much of a leader you are. And so for this person who's struggling with bravery, whether you're a formal leader or not in the workplace, you may have a manager title, you may not. I applaud you for trying to use your bravery to lead and to influence, maybe without authority. What it comes down to, top of my head, I would say, is a situation with your workplace culture. It may be your direct manager. It may be a broader issue of the organizational's culture and what their vision, mission, and values are. It wouldn't be uncommon for someone's personal values and strengths to not line up with a company's. Even probably more common or more discouraging if your strengths and values don't line up with your direct managers. We've all heard the saying that people leave managers, not companies. That can be true when we're bringing in interpersonal connections and miscommunications. Would love to hear more about this situation individually. What I would do is encourage you to develop your strength even further and maybe to seek out some additional coaching or feedback on whether you are in the role that you are meant to be in. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. So our final question is, would you recommend any particular books or resources if you would like to learn more about developing resilience?
I should have brought that with me. I do have a list of resources. What I would like to propose is if I could send that to you, Lisa, and would it be possible for you to upload like a Google Doc or something along with the webinar, or we can add, actually, here's a better proposal. How about I add some resources to the back of the slide deck, and so then when you upload it, it will be included for anybody who wants to rewatch it.
Yep, that sounds great. My apologies. My internet went out for a little bit.
That's no good. And you know what? I'll offer one more thing. So I have no problem sharing my materials at all either. And sometimes it's hard to rewatch a webinar or capture everything that you want to. So on the screen is my email again. If you'd like to reach out to me and request a copy of the slide deck, I'm more than willing to share that with you. And maybe we can connect that way.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you so much for taking the time and your incredibly useful information, especially during this time. If you enjoyed this webinar and want to dive deeper into this topic, again, there is a list of upcoming courses right on this slide, as well as my contact information if you'd like to learn more information. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending a link to this webinar recording as well as the slide deck within a week. And I just want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Take care and all stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.